Steve Pichenik, and this is Steve Talks. Hi, this is Dr. Pichenik and Steve Talks. Today I want to talk about an article that appeared in the New York Times recently by a gentleman named Nasser. It referred to the increase of anti-Semitism in France. That's a subject, as many of you know, is quite personal for me. I grew up in France, and I was in France the first time right after the war in the late 40s, and what I saw I didn't like, and I remembered it quite well. There were collaborationists, there were people whose hair was trimmed off, France was destroyed, and many collaborators were declared heroes when in fact there was very little French resistance. De Gaulle created Jean Moulin. There wasn't really any Jean Moulin. It was the Communist Party that was anti-fascist. But now what's happening is there's only 500,000 Jews left in Paris, in the 17th arrondissement. But 40% of all the crimes committed by Muslims are occurring against 1% of the population of France. That means the Jews. The Jews represent only now 1%. And what happened, thanks to Macron, thanks to socialism, and thanks to the fact that France lives in a hypocritical concept of equality, the Jews have been persecuted not only between the 1930s, during the German occupation, after the German occupation, but they're now persecuted once again by the Muslims and by the French government that refuses to intercede and say once and for all, enough anti-Semitism. Here's what's happening. 50,000 Jews are leaving per year. They're going to Israel, and they said enough to France. This was not a country that either served me or saved me from the anti-Muslim, anti-Jewish experience and the pro-Muslim increase in attitude. There's another issue that hasn't been dealt with by Macron, and that is the fact that he will not admit to the examination of the 1994 genocide of the Rwandans. The French were instrumental in the killing and massacre of 1 million Rwandans. It was Mitterrand, his generals, the mercenaries involved who supplied the machine guns, supplied the guns, and even the Catholic priests. And all of them were involved in the massacre of Rwanda. Macron has been informed about it repeatedly. He refuses to recognize this misdeed and this miscreant behavior. And furthermore, the Catholic Church, under Pope Francis, refuses to recognize that there were over 22 priests who were involved in the slaughter of thousands of Rwandans in a Catholic Church. So once again, we have the hypocrisy of the Catholic Church. We have the hypocrisy of the so-called Catholic Socialist state of France, and we have the hypocrisy of the United Nations, which refuses to do anything about the culpability of France in Rwanda. Lest you think France only had anti-Semitism or anti-Rwandan feelings, I also want to remind you, France had occupied Vietnam for over 100 years and slaughtered and tortured hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese. When we were captured in Hanoi and elsewhere in Vietnam, the Americans were captured. The French attitude was we had to go to war or otherwise we would go to prison. But the Hanoi attitude towards the French was this was different. The French were miscreant, they were nasty, and they were brutal to the Vietnamese. Lest you think it's only Vietnam and Rwanda, let me remind you about Cambodia, where the French had trained Pol Pot to be a French teacher. I, in turn, had to come back into Cambodia and try to get rid of Pol Pot, which we did, as well as disarm thousands and hundreds of thousands of Khmer Rouge. Let me end by a quote that General de Gaulle and President de Gaulle said about France. If France is to remain France, it must be great. And let me add, in order for France to be great or even good, it has to admit to its culpability against the Jews, against the Vietnamese, against Rwanda, and against many other countries. Good night and good luck. Hi, this is Dr. Steve Pichenik, and this is Steve Talks.